My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Game of Thrones Season 1, and this will be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, then come back and watch this review because I will be going in depth. Now, I watched this season for the first time a few years ago, and I gotta be honest, I didn't really care for it all too much. I thought there was a lot of characters, a lot of names, and I was trying to keep up with it all, and I just didn't really care. It wasn't until Ned died that the show truly grabbed me, but up until that point, I didn't love it. So I just rewatched it for the very first time, and I have to say that the old me is complete nuts. This is a perfect season of television and one of the best first seasons of television to ever exist. Like, it is just so freaking good. What's most impressive is that the show sets everything up so perfectly while also telling its own story that has huge emotional weight and sets up consequences that last for the rest of the show. And it's also got a lot of characters, but each one is set up so perfectly. You understand who these people are, and every action feels driven by character rather than plot contrivance. You've also got a lot going on, like there is a lot of plot, but I never felt lost for a single second. It's always engaging, and it also takes place over a large volume of land. And it just has this grand epic feel to it. And the scope is huge. And on top of that, you've also got these smaller character moments. You've got some heartbreaking scenes. But you've also got zombies and witches and political tension. You just got it all. Like, this is how you start a season of television. Just absolute perfection. And the main story is great. I just love how it's this relationship between Ned and the King, Robert, and how what starts off as a friendly alliance breaks down into a war between the Starks and the Lannisters, and it's so expertly told. I'll begin talking about the main plot, the plot revolving around King's Landing, and just everything regarding Ned's investigation of Jon Arryn, I just found to be very riveting. We know what's going on, and we know that he's putting himself in a very serious and dire situation, which just makes it all the more tense. And what frustrates me on top of that is that Ned is a good man. And he does and says stupid things with the best of intentions. Like when he tells Cersei he knows everything, he probably shouldn't have, but he saw her got beaten up by Robert and he didn't want that to happen again, so he decided to give her a head start because he had to tell the truth. And it ends up biting him in the ass. You've also got everything going on with Cat and Tyrion, and that just adds tension between the Starks and the Lannisters, and the fact that Ned takes full responsibility for it because he's a good man just further escalates things. Like, it's just kind of funny how this all started with Bran seeing Jaime and Cersei have sex. And it just sets off a chain of events from that point forward. And I love the one episode where the king is dying and you're just watching Ned make every wrong decision and having faith in people he shouldn't. And doing things you know he shouldn't. And when that one guy goes up to him and he's like, King Joffrey would like to see you. And he's like, King? I just felt sick to my stomach. Like, nothing good can come from this. And the way it escalates from that point forward, it's just so unnerving. You're just infuriated. And you also see how it affects his daughters. Like, Sansa is doing everything she can to save Ned, but she's in a terrible situation herself. In that scene where she gets in, Joffrey's at the throne, and she's begging for mercy for her father. And Joffrey's just like, he has to say that I'm the rightful heir. And he has to admit that he committed treason. And she's like, he will. And the camera just pans down behind the throne and the music picks up and I get goosebumps just talking about it. It's just really incredible stuff. And then you've also got this scene where Arya's training with Syrio and suddenly the brutal realization of everything just hits her. Syrio, not like Cheerios or Nesquik, but cereal, obviously dies, and then she goes outside and there's a ton of dead bodies, and you just feel the weight of it. How nothing is going to be the same again. And I like how Ned was going to die with honor and not give Joffrey what he wants, but he's willing to ruin his reputation if it means Sansa can be safe. And we just get one of the greatest moments in television history here. Like, the first time I watched this series, I was just thinking, okay, how is he going to get out of this? What kind of plot contrivance is suddenly going to show its head? Is Arya going to save him? Who's going to show up last second? And I kept waiting for someone to save him, and wait. And then he dies, and I was just like, wait, what? Like, Ned was the main character, and they just killed him off. I couldn't believe my eyes. Like, I should have known better. He's played by Sean Bean, but even the first time I watched it, when I wasn't really into it all that much, I was just shocked. And watching it this time, it's still a very impactful moment. Like, he wasn't just the main character, but he was a good man. And just to watch everyone throw things at him, calling him a liar, a traitor, and all that. You know, I think they're going for some parallels with him and Jesus Christ in some ways, but man, it hits hard. And the fact that he loses his last moments to get Lauren to cover Arya's eyes and to admit to committing treason to save Sansa. He spent his last moments alive trying everything he can to save his daughters. And then he just accepts his death. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. And, you know, just seeing Arya's heartbreak makes it hit even harder. And then you know that Sansa's in a terrible spot, and you're like, well, maybe that's as bad as Joffrey's going to get. Maybe he just wants his revenge on Ned for saying that he wasn't the rightful heir, and that's it. But then the next episode, he gets that guy's tongue ripped out, and he's just like, Sansa, come with me. And like, okay, so he's still going to be sweet and romantic towards Sansa. And then he's just like, hey, yo, that's your dad's head on a spike. And you're just like, what? What is wrong with this guy? Like, what an evil psychopath. I was really hoping Sansa would push him off that bridge. And my goodness, you just get a sense of how evil he is. So everything in King's Landing is just excellent. And then you've got all the Winterfell stuff. And, okay, look, I'll tell you right now. Bran is the least interesting character. But this season still introduces him very well. And then we've got Kat, who is investigating what happened to Bran and how she falsely accuses Tyrion. And she takes him to her sister, and this might be a hot take, but Robin, the sister's kid who's still being breastfed, I think he's just as bad, if not worse, than Joffrey. I just despise that little piece of shit. And just the fact that he's still breastfeeding, it's so freaking uncomfortable. But anyways, then we get this duel between Bronn and this other soldier, and I just think all of this stuff is really great. And then after they find out about what happened to Ned, Robb, Greyjoy, and Kat start preparing for war, so everything feels really well connected between that and the Tyrion stuff. And Kat has to make a deal with the Freys that Robb has to marry one of their daughters for a passage route, and, well, I just hope nothing bad comes from that. And I just love their plan and how they end up capturing Jaime, and how Robb truly feels shame over letting 2,000 of his men die. And I love how when Ned dies, you feel the shockwave over here. You know, that one scene where Kat goes into the woods as she just starts to fall apart, and then she sees Robb truly upset, and she goes from a grieving widow to a loving mother just like that. She puts her own feelings aside to be there for her son, and I think it's a truly powerful moment. And then you got everything with the Targaryens, which I think is just perfection. I just love this story of a woman who's being used to marry someone she doesn't want to for her brother's gain, and It's truly awful at the start, but when she stops acting like a victim and she takes control of the situation, she just becomes more powerful than she ever imagined, which creates jealousy in her brother as he is now viewed as less than her, and how his rage and his jealousy results in an outburst. Well, he wants a golden crown, so he gets his wish in a really brutal but amazing death scene. Like, just really perfect stuff. But then you also see that all the good in Daenerys' storyline is already coming crashing down based on her good-natured decisions, and it ruins everything. You know, she didn't want these women to suffer anymore, so she tries to help them, only for the one witch to get her revenge on Drago. Drago? Is that his name? Does he have the same name as the guy in How to Train Your Dragon 2? Let me just quickly check. Drago. Not Drago, Drago. Anyways, so close enough. You get where the mix-up was. But ultimately, Daenerys is responsible in some way for Drago's death and how she's forced to kill him and how she ends up becoming the Queen of the Dragons in the very end. Like, that last scene of the season is just amazing. It truly is. Freaking incredible stuff. And then you've got everything going on with the Night Watch, and I just love how it introduces the doomed feeling of this location perfectly along with the others. And I love how everyone, for the most part, didn't tell him the truth about this place, but Tyrion did, and Jaime kinda did in some way. And you kind of feel bad for Jon because he's a good man and a great warrior, but he gets screwed over time and time again. And he just gets bullied based on the fact that he's a bastard. And it sets up the White Walker plot well. I wouldn't say this plot is the meat of this season, but it's still really good stuff. And I just love how overall you really gain a sense of just how cruel and relentless this world is. Like, if you're a good person, you aren't going to make it. Ned was a good person, and those good-hearted decisions led to his own death. Daenerys tried to be a good person, and it ended up in more pain and misery for her. And it's truly amazing just how much happens and how much is set up here. Like I said, everything with the Red Wedding starts in this season. In fact, when you really look at the rest of the show, it all starts with this season. So it's impressive. But let's begin talking about the cast, and this is a long list. I don't know if I'm going to read the entire cast list for every season, but I might. So I'll make it quick. First, we've got Sean Bean as Ned Stark. I think he's a great actor, and he's really fantastic in this show. It's a shame he didn't get nominated for an Emmy for it, but he portrays a good man so perfectly. And I also just love the way his character is written and how he steps down as in that one moment. And yeah, I think he's great. You've got Michelle Fairley as Caitlyn Stark. Great performance. She's a strong woman, but she also has heart. You've got Sophie Turner as Sansa Stark. Great performance, and you buy the love-struck teenager and how she's immediately thrown into the most dangerous situation. And I love that one line she says to Joffrey when he's saying that he might have Robb's head up on a spike too, and she's like, oh, maybe he'll give me those. That was a great moment. You've got Macy Williams as Arya Stark, who is my favorite character in this season. I think she's just amazing. I love how she wants to be a badass, and she's just got so many great lines, like when she's stabbing the table repeatedly, and they're just like, what are you doing? I'm practicing for the prince. Crack me up, absolutely love it. I also love how there's that one scene where Ned is talking to Sansa about how we'll go back to Winterfell and we'll get you a strong, honorable man. And she's like, I don't want a strong, honorable man. I want Joffrey. And Arya starts laughing because she gets the irony in what she just said. She brings some much needed levity, but her use and her being naive also bring a unique point of view. Like when Ned explains why Sansa didn't tell the truth about what happened with the butcher's boy, about how he's just like, she was forced to call the prince a loyal. Someone who she's going to be married to in the future. And I was just like, so? I did it. And then you've also got this one scene where she asks Ned how he could let Sansa marry someone like Joffrey. And just the fact that this youth, naive point of view is almost gone by the end of the season because of the brutal realities. And like the fact that she heals an entire kingdom, just hate her dad, rooting for his deaths, it just couldn't be easy. So I love this character. You've got Richard Madden as Robb Stark, a man who is suddenly given a ton of responsibility and he plays it perfectly. You've got Kate Harington as Jon Snow, and he also plays a good man incredibly well. You root for him. You've got John Bradley as Sam. You understand why he's treated so poorly, but he just brings so much humanity to this character. You've got Alfie Allen as Theron Greyjoy. Doesn't have much to do here, but he's good. I've seen up till the end of season 4, so I know what happens to him, and I'm just happy to see him in the situation he's in this season compared to later seasons. I'll say that. Then you've got Isaac Hempstead, who, if I remember correctly, is that not the person who voices the main character in the Box Trolls? I think it is, but anyways, he does fine as Bran. You've got Mark Addy, who plays Robert Baratheon. I'm not good with these names. I have a speech impediment. That's my excuse. But I love how he can be very serious with Ned 1 second, but then the next he's laughing, and you're just never sure what side of him you're going to get. And he seems like a good person in some moments, but then you see how awful he can be, like him hitting his wife. And yes, he's immediately regretful about it afterwards, but it doesn't, he still did it. So like, he's not an evil man, but he's certainly not good either. He's heavily flawed, but I don't know, when I'm not sure if this person is that good or that bad, it just shows you just how shitty everyone is in this show, because there's so many despicable scumbags, and he's not great, but he's better than a lot of them. Then you've got, oh my goodness, this name is going to kill me, Dinklage Coster-Waldau as Jaime Lannister, and I'm just saying that he looks exactly like Prince Charming in Shrek 2, but I think he's great here. I love that one scene where he could have killed Ned, but it wasn't the honorable thing to do, so I love that. You got Lena Headey as Cersei Lannister, and she just plays this evil person so well, but she also brings a level of humanity to her character, because she married the man she wanted to, but all he did was grieve over someone else, and he treated her terribly as a result of that. And as evil as she is, you do understand why she's as cold as she is. Then you've got Jack Gleeson as Joffrey, and looking up the Emmys, this guy didn't get nominated once. What a complete joke. Honestly, if you ask me, he should have won a few times. This is a brilliant performance. Like, it is just truly incredible stuff. The fact that he goes from the helpless kid in Batman Begins to a role of this magnitude is so impressive. And just from the moment you see him, you kind of hate him, and you just learn to hate him more and more and more. And he just plays this despicable character so well. Like, he plays him in such a gleeful manner, which makes you hate him even more. So he's great. You've got Rory McKean, who's great as a Hound. You've got Peter Dinklage, who is really fantastic here. I haven't talked much about Tyrion, but I do love how he doesn't really have his main plot. He kind of just wanders from one area to the next, and you just see him interact with all these different people. And I love how he's not a good man, but he does have some honorable qualities to him. You know, the fact that he could have easily ran away and left Kate alone in that one scene, but instead he saves her life and remains her prisoner, just shows the quality of his character. And then you've also got that one scene where he tells Mort he'll give him some gold, and he actually follows through on that. I love that. And you do feel bad for him, as everyone both, you know, they physically look down on him, and they also metaphorically do. Especially his father, and how he feels like because he's a dwarf, no one's ever going to respect him. And I think there's a lot of depth to this character, but Peter Dinklage brings so much humanity to him. That scene where he's describing the first time he fell in love is truly a heartbreaking moment, and I loved it. You've also got Shay, played by Cyborg Kikeli, who's great. Jerome Flynn as Bronn, who I think does a great job, and I love how you think that, okay, this is an honorable man, he fought for Tyrion, but he did it mainly for the riches. So it kind of shows you how just because you do a good act, it doesn't make you a good man. You've got Aidan Gillen as Littlefinger. He's such a bitch. He just plays this conniving asshole so well. Lord Varys, played by Cornelius Hale. He's, not always on the right side, but he's still a good man. He's the one person who's there for Ned in his lowest of lows. You've got Charles Dance as Tywin, who's great. Aidan Glenn as Jorel Mormont, who's great. You've got Amelia Clarke as Daenerys Targaryen, who is really amazing here. She brings so many layers to this character, and she shows a wide range from going from a weak girl to a strong one, from spineless to confident. Then you've got Harry Lloyd as her brother, and when I saw that name, I'm just like, oh my goodness, it's Victor from Arcane. But he does play this unlikable douche so perfectly. And then you've got Jason Momoa, who gives a really great physical performance. So everyone does a great job. All the characters are well written and have some sort of depth to them. If I had to mention the standout performances this season, it would be Sean Bean, Macy Williams, Jack Gleeson, and Peter Dinklage. So that's all great, and the directing and the craftsmanship behind the show is also undeniable. It looks like a high budget show, the cinematography is great, visually it just transports you to Westeros, the costume and makeup is great, the visual effects and the sound are really impressive, and the musical score by Raymond Dedradi is really great. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of names here. I'm mispronouncing a lot, but I don't care. The one thing I don't like about this season, it's a very small issue, but it's one small moment. Well, tension is high. Arya just she's trying to escape the palace, and she comes across a stable boy, and she accidentally kills him. But the way this scene is edited is just so weird and just feels off. But yes, this is a perfect season of television. You feel the emotional weight behind everything, and when things escalate, you feel sick to your stomach. It tells a great story with twists and turns that you wouldn't expect, while still setting everything up so perfectly, setting every character up so incredibly well, giving them some level of depth. It's incredibly well directed. Each performance brings life to these characters. It's just a perfect season of television. It's as good as you've heard. If you haven't seen it, why do you watch this review? But yeah, it's a must watch. I'm going to go ahead and give Game of Thrones Season 1 a 9 out of 10. Truly one of the greatest seasons of television ever. But have you seen Game of Thrones Season 1? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.